My name is Elena Hartley, and for 28 years I lived in the shadow of a lie I didn't see coming. I used to think love looked like sacrifice. That family meant bending backward until your spine broke, if it meant keeping someone else from falling. I believed that for my little sister Claire, my bright-eyed, reckless, beautiful Claire, I could be the steady one, the one who stayed behind while she flew, and for a long time I was. After our mother passed away when I was 20, it was just the two of us. Dad had left long before, and we had no grandparents to fall back on. Claire was only 17, barely out of high school, and suddenly our world was buried in funeral bills and casseroles from neighbors who stopped calling 2 weeks later. I dropped out of college to take care of Claire. I gave up my scholarship at an art school in New York. My dream. I thought dreams can wait, Claire can't. She needed me. That was enough, so I worked days at the diner, nights cleaning offices, I clipped coupons, skipped meals, and pawned the few nice things Mom left behind just to keep us in that little rental house with the yellowing curtains. And through it all, I watched Claire bloom taking drama classes, joining theater groups, even landing small roles in indie plays. I cheered the loudest at every performance, always from the back row, dressed in secondhand clothes and clapping with dishpan hands. People loved her, especially when she shared our story, the one where she struggled to survive after losing our mom, the one where she was forced to take care of her older sister who spiraled into depression and did nothing with her life, the one where she was the hero I didn't mind, at least not at first. She was young. Maybe she was exaggerating to be dramatic. That's what actors did, right? But then came the scholarship. Claire had applied for a prestigious program in London, a full ride housing tuition stipend. She was over the moon. I remember the day she burst into our tiny kitchen, barefoot and radiant, waving the acceptance letter like it was the golden ticket. I cried. I hugged her. I told her she deserved it. She left a month later with one suitcase and a tearful goodbye. I watched her walk through the security gate at the airport, my heart bursting with pride and emptiness. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I saw Claire as my sister. The first red flag came in the form of a social media post. 6 months after she left, I saw an article about Claire in a lifestyle magazine. The headline read, "From Tragedy to Triumph, Meet Claire Hartley, the girl who raised herself from the ashes, raised herself." The article gushed about how Claire overcame the death of both parents, both lived on food stamps, worked multiple jobs, and put herself through school before getting accepted into the London program. It quoted pages from her inspirational diary, which she planned to turn into a book. My diary, my handwriting, my life. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. She had scanned my old journals, the ones I used to write in late at night while she slept, back when I was exhausted and scared and grieving. She had taken my words, my pain, and made them her brand. I didn't confront her right away. I told myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe someone twisted her words. Maybe she didn't mean it. I messaged her. "Hey, saw the article. Want to chat," but she never replied. Then came the notice from my bank. Claire had opened a credit card in my name, one I never applied for, and racked up charges for designer clothes, high-end salons, even a stay at a five-star resort in Greece. When I called the company, they said the ID and signature matched Elena Hartley. They even sent a copy of the scanned application. It was my name, but the handwriting Claire's. My hands shook as I held the paper. She'd forged everything, stolen my identity, stolen my story, stolen me. I called her, left voicemails, emailed, nothing. So I turned to the last person who might help our Aunt Marion. She sighed when I told her, "Elena, sweetheart, Claire said you've been going through a rough patch. She said you've been unstable. Claire told people I was crazy. She'd rewritten the script. In her version, I was the jealous sister clinging to her, dragging her down, the failure, the burden. The one who couldn't let go. In her version, she was the savior. That night, I packed everything I owned into a single suitcase, just like she once did, and left the house we grew up in. I left the town where people looked at me with pity or suspicion. I left behind the name Elena Hartley. If Claire wanted to be me so badly, let her have the ashes. I was going to rise from them, but not as her sister, not anymore. When I left Millstone Hollow, I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just vanished. Let them believe whatever story Claire had fed them. I rented a small attic room in a city 2 states over. No furniture, just a creaky mattress, a folding chair, and the sound of rain hitting the tin roof like angry applause. I found work at a bookstore during the day, cleaning floors and sorting dusty stacks. At night, I took on remote gigs, editing articles, ghostwriting blog posts, anything I could do under a different name. I became someone else. And in doing so, I began remembering who I really was. I didn't cry much. That surprised me. Maybe it was because I'd spent years crying for Claire, crying when she missed school, crying when she didn't come home, crying when she told me you're not my mom, Elena, and slammed her bedroom door. Back then, I always blamed myself. Maybe I was too strict, maybe I didn't support her dreams enough, maybe I should have done more, but now I knew the truth. Claire wasn't lost. She wasn't struggling, she was calculating. She'd taken pieces of me, stitched them into her own skin, and sold it as a fairy tale. She'd made a career out of wearing my pain and pretending it was hers. The worst part wasn't the theft, it was the betrayal. She'd weaponized our bond, made it into a performance. I wasn't just the sister, I was the antagonist in her origin story. The emotionally unstable, jealous, bitter anchor that she had to break free from. She didn't just erase me, she rewrote me. About a year after I disappeared, I got a message request on a new email I'd set up under a pseudonym. The subject line read, "Hi Big Sis." I clicked it, hesitating. Elena. OMG. It's been so long. Hope you're okay. Things have been crazy over here. The book's been picked up by an international publisher. Also, they might turn it into a series for streaming. Can you believe it? I know things got weird, but I really hope you're doing okay. Just know I always love you. Let's catch up soon, Claire. No apology, no mention of the lies, just a casual glossy update like we were old friends and not the ghost of a bridge she burned. I didn't reply. Instead, I created a folder on my laptop called Project Ashes. Inside it, I began saving everything. Articles with her interviews, screenshots of her social media posts, clips from podcasts where she tearfully spoke about watching her sister sink into mental illness and finding her strength in silence, even clips of her TED-style talk titled The Art of Becoming Yourself. Every lie she told I archived, every word she stole I documented. And then I opened my old journals, the originals. The ones she never knew, I kept locked in a storage box separate from the ones she'd scanned. And I started writing. Not a blog, not a revenge letter, a book, a real one. It was harder than I thought, not because I didn't know what to say. God, I had too much to say, but because it hurt to revisit those memories. Watching Mom slowly fade, listening to our landlord threaten eviction, burning my college acceptance letter because I couldn't afford the tuition deposit. Nights I went to sleep hungry just to make sure Claire had lunch money. These weren't stories to me, they were scars. But as I wrote, something shifted. I stopped writing for them, for publishers, for readers. Even for Claire, I started writing for me. I titled the manuscript The Girl Who Stayed, and I wrote like my life depended on it. 2 years passed. By then, Claire had become a household name in motivational entertainment. She was all over social media, booking speaking tours, working on screen adaptations, and collaborating with healing lifestyle brands. Every time she opened her mouth, my words poured out, diluted, dramatized, commercialized. But she made one mistake. She thought I was gone. In her world, I was a broken has-been, a rumor, a phase. She forgot the first rule of storytelling: never erase the narrator. One day, while scrolling through her latest PR post, something caught my eye. A caption: "Excited to be the new ambassador for the Human Flame Foundation, empowering voices of women survivors around the globe." The Human Flame Foundation, a global nonprofit that funded education, entrepreneurship, and justice for women who had survived trauma, real trauma. They had a strict vetting process for authenticity, and they were hosting a televised gala in 3 months. With Claire as the keynote speaker, I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I whispered to no one but the ghosts of everything she stole. Perfect, that night I lit a candle, not for mourning, for war. They say revenge is best served cold. I preferred mine slow-cooked with documentation, timelines, and cross-referenced lies. 3 months, that's all I had. 3 months until the Human Flame Foundation's gala, an international broadcast full of cameras, journalists, and survivors from across the globe. A place where truth mattered. A place where reputation was currency. And Claire was about to make the biggest withdrawal of her life on credit. She didn't own. Perfect. I spent the first week building a case. Not legal. Not yet. But something more powerful. A narrative she couldn't refute. I started with my journals, not the ones she scanned and claimed. The real ones, written by hand, page after page with exact dates, newspaper clippings, and receipts tucked between entries. I digitized them all and embedded metadata timestamps, GPS info from scanned photos, old school documents signed by our mother. Then I collected voice recordings. Claire used to leave long voicemails when we were still on good terms, somewhere in there. I remembered one where she thanked me for giving up your whole life so I could chase mine. I found it. Preserved in my cloud backup. Gold. Next came interviews. Quiet ones. I reached out to Mrs. Whitley, our high school guidance counselor. She still remembered me. "You were the one always picking Claire up after detention," she laughed. "And working double shifts at the diner, right?" I asked if she'd be willing to give a statement. "I've watched Claire on TV," she said. "I always wondered why her story sounded familiar but not true." She agreed. Then there was Jordan, a nurse who worked with me nights at the hospital cafeteria. Back then, I worked 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. just to afford Claire's headshots. I remember you used to read those little journals on your break, she said. The ones with the coffee stains and pressed flowers. She remembered everything. One by one, I built my archive. Not just facts, feelings, not just data context. I created a full digital dossier, the real story of Elena Hartley. Then I reached out to a contact I never thought I'd use again. Dr. Patel, my old professor at the Art Institute in New York. She had once called me a visionary stuck in survival mode. I told her what happened. I sent her the manuscript I had written, The Girl Who Stayed. She read it in one night and replied, Elena, we need to get this published, not for revenge, because it's a masterpiece. That's when I knew this wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming authorship of my life. 2 weeks before the gala, Claire did a live stream. She sat in a minimalist loft, makeup flawless candles flickering behind her like she lived in permanent peace. People ask me what inspired my book, she said. And honestly, it was my sister watching someone you love give up on themselves. It's devastating. But I knew I had to rise for both of us. I stared at the screen, unmoved. She was rehearsing a eulogy for a sister she'd buried alive. 1 week before the gala, I submitted my manuscript under my legal name, Elena Noel Hartley, to 3 publishers. 2 replied within 48 hours. The third offered me a deal on the spot, contingent on one thing. Would I be willing to tell my story publicly? I said not yet. I wasn't ready to tell. I was ready to show. 3 days before the gala, I contacted the Human Flame Foundation I didn't accuse. I simply asked, may I speak with your vetting committee regarding some inconsistencies in your keynote speaker's personal narrative? I have documentation to support my concern. An hour later, I was in a Zoom meeting with 3 board members. I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I just told the truth with timelines, audio screenshots, and verification links. They didn't say much, but their faces said everything. The night before the gala, I received an anonymous text from a New York number. You're cruel after everything I did for you. This is how you repay me. You ruined me. Claire. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote back one line. I didn't ruin you. I just turned the lights on. Gala day. I didn't buy a ticket, didn't sneak backstage. I didn't need to. The foundation invited me to attend formally. As a guest of the board, I arrived in a navy blue dress, hair pinned back, calm, almost invisible. No one noticed me. All eyes were on the glowing woman at center stage, Claire. She walked up to the podium. Lights warmed her face. Applause thundered around her. She smiled, opened her mouth, and then the screen behind her flickered. It was supposed to display her name and title. Instead, it said, Claire Hartley built on borrowed stories. Then the video started to play. The screen glitched once more, then settled into a black background. Silence fell over the gala hall. The lights dimmed slightly. Guests exchanged confused looks. Claire froze at the podium, then the video began. First, a montage of headlines. Claire Hartley, from orphan to icon. She raised herself from the ashes. She escaped a toxic sister. Then a voice recording. You gave up your whole life for me, Elena. One day I'll make it up to you, I promise. Claire's voice, soft, younger, vulnerable. Real, it played twice. No one moved. Then came images, scans of journal pages, complete with dates from over 10 years ago. Pages viewers would later see quoted verbatim in Claire's best-selling memoir, but now clearly bearing the name Elena Hartley at the bottom. Text faded in over the footage. These are not the words of Claire Hartley. The video continued. Clips of high school teachers recounting how Elena dropped out, a landlord remembering how Elena negotiated rent, a nurse testifying to Elena's double shifts. Then came Claire's social media clips, her talking about raising herself, watching her sister spiral, healing without help. Each lie was followed immediately by a contradiction. A photo, a dated text, a voice memo, a witness, a receipt. It wasn't just a presentation, it was a prosecution. Claire's face drained of color. She stood still, hands trembling on the podium, eyes darting from the screen to the audience and back. When the video ended, there was no applause, just a slow, suffocating silence. Then the voice of the foundation's chairwoman cut through the room, measured clear. We thank Ms. Hartley for her time. At this point, the Human Flame Foundation will be pausing all partnerships pending an internal review. We apologize to our supporters for this unfortunate oversight. No drama, no chaos, just cold, clean severance. Claire tried to speak. Her voice cracked into the mic. This is slander. This is revenge. My sister is mentally ill. She's obsessed with destroying me. But the microphone cut off. Two security staff gently stepped onto the stage, not aggressively, just enough to make a point. Claire looked around, eyes wide, silently begging for someone, anyone to defend her. No one stood. She stepped down, shoes clicking too loudly on the polished floor, and I remained seated in the back row, composed. I didn't need a spotlight. I was the truth, and the truth doesn't perform. It waits outside. Claire found me. Her heels scraped against stone as she stormed up, mascara-streaked hair unraveling. "You ruined me," she hissed, voice shaking. "Do you even know what you've done?" I looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time in years. Not the icon, not the Instagram-filtered version. Just the girl who used to sleep curled beside me when thunder scared her. The girl I protected from bullies, from bills, from life. And I said, "I didn't ruin you, Claire. I just took back what you stole." She laughed bitterly. "You think people will believe you now?" I held up a copy of my manuscript on the cover. "The Girl Who Stayed" by Elena Noel Hartley. They already do. By the time the sun rose, Claire's PR team had gone silent. The publisher dropped her, the foundation issued a formal apology, and a journalist contacted me asking for a follow-up interview. I declined. This wasn't about going viral, it was about vindication. The world finally saw her for what she was. But more importantly, I finally saw me. The week after the gala felt like living in an echo chamber. Everywhere I went online, Claire's name trended, but not with the glowing praise she'd once commanded. Words like fraud, liar, identity thief flooded every headline. Talk shows picked it up. Podcasts dissected it. Think pieces emerged on the commodification of trauma and how easily the world buys a pretty face with a tearful story. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, not broken, not bitter, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm has passed and you're still standing, but the house is gone. Claire tried to salvage what she could. She posted a video, shaky, poorly lit, clearly not professionally edited. "I was misunderstood," she said, blinking too fast. "I just wanted to honor my sister's struggle. I never claimed it was my own." But now, no one bought it. Because the receipts were out there. Because I was out there. Not screaming, not pointing fingers, just existing with proof. She went offline the next day. Meanwhile, my book was quietly gaining traction. At first, I didn't even know I wasn't promoting it. I didn't care about book tours or signings. I just wanted to breathe. But emails started pouring in. "Thank you for writing this. I saw myself in your silence. Your strength made me realize I'm not crazy for remembering things differently than my abuser told me. I believed my sister over myself. Not anymore. Each one was a small stone laid into the foundation of the life I was rebuilding. 6 months passed. I moved into a new apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had a balcony with morning light and a chair just big enough for me to curl up with a cup of tea and a pen. I started writing again. Not revenge, not rebuttals, just reflections, essays, observations, pieces of myself I thought I'd lost. And one morning I got a letter, not an email, a handwritten letter. From Claire. "I don't know who I am without your story. I don't know how to live with what I've done. But I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. I'm sorry. Claire." I folded the letter, tucked it into a box, not out of spite, just readiness. Maybe one day I'd open it again. Maybe one day I'd write back. But not today. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about freeing yourself from being defined by their actions. I don't hate Claire. I just don't need her anymore. Not as my enemy, not as my shadow, not even as my sister. The final chapter of my book ends with a single line. "I never wanted revenge. I only ever wanted to be seen. And now for the first time in my life, I am